Okay, so hi everyone.
Hello.
Hey, thanks. So welcome to Data and the Greater Good. This is a UX and Data presentation for today. All right, let's get a round of applause for Sree.
Well, this worked. It's amazing. Hi, everybody. I'm delighted to be here with all of you. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and we are not using my hashtag #SreeTips because this is not my session. So please use whatever hashtag. What is the hashtag, guys? Is there a hashtag? Let's UX and Data. UX Data Meetup, maybe? Should we do that? Sure. Or hashtag UX Meta Data. Shall we use that, everybody? Is that okay? Okay, so UX Data Meetup, all one word. Okay, with a hashtag. All right. So I am just delighted to be here and to be with all of you, and especially my former museum colleague, Catherine, who is CDO of the Natural History Museum. What an amazing title that is, and a great job. And she was one of the first people who came to see me at the Met very early, and I learned a lot from what the Natural History Museum is doing. I'm going to share a little bit about this idea of greater good and data and greater good. And I'll just tell you a little bit about my background. I was a professor at Columbia University and the Columbia Journalism School for 21 years. And I left everything I know to go work at the Metropolitan Museum of Art as the chief digital officer. And I gave up full free tuition for my kids at Columbia, half tuition anywhere in the world. It's all pre-tax dollars, and it's about $1.1 million that I left behind on the table. And this is a moment where you think I'm completely crazy and you should actually walk out and have more pizza, because how would you trust anything coming out of my mouth after that? But I said, I'm leaving $1 million behind, but I'm getting 17 Van Goghs, so it's a good deal. And I said this at an international group that thought I had somehow gotten a Van Gogh. And I did not get a Van Gogh. You should know that. It's really important that you understand this. And I absolutely loved my 3 years at the Met, but they had financial difficulties, so I left. And I'll share a little bit about what I learned in the process. And among the things that I want to just make sure you have are, this is a slideshow that I use for my presentation about social media in general. And you can just take a picture of this so you have the slides. You see that bit.ly/Sree status report. And you also have my email address, my Twitter handle, my Instagram, and my LinkedIn. Anyone here on LinkedIn? Raise your hand. How many of you know what you're doing on LinkedIn? See the hands fall or you turn into an Indian dancer, right? Like the reason is that even it's 2018, I first wrote about LinkedIn in 2005, and people still don't use it. Why? Because we think LinkedIn is a job hunting tool, which it is, but it's a career management tool. I believe every 9th grader should get on LinkedIn and have that for the rest of his or her life. I think it's that important. And there's a data component to it. And what is that? That they have taken LinkedIn and made it so much better, and the amount of data you get out of it is really good. They did shut down the API, so for developers it's not good, but as users and consumers of data, the amount of stuff you get back from LinkedIn. So my one suggestion to all of you in terms of LinkedIn is take what you're already posting on Facebook and take it and just throw it on on LinkedIn once a week and see what happens. The data you get back is so informational and so useful to you that you will start to use it more and more. So I encourage you to use LinkedIn. I also want to invite you to my closed Facebook group called Sree's Advanced Social. You can just go on Facebook and type in Sree'(S) Advanced Social. You'll find that it's one of the most useful places on Facebook, and not because of me, but because of the community we've built there. People who've taken my classes from around the world, but also really good senior people from Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all of these platforms, the CEO of Foursquare, they're all on there. So you ask a question, someone will answer, and there's somebody awake somewhere in the world. And so I encourage you to use that. And also, if you'd like to sign up for my newsletter, you can. And all of this, again, is found off those slides with that first link. And then all the way at the bottom are all my best social media tips on one single slide, or one single page, which is that bit.ly link at the bottom. I also want to make a plug for bit.ly. Any bit.ly users here? Everybody should have their own bit.ly account. It's a free service, and you can get your own account, and you can then do this. You can remember all your web pages because you can customize it. It's free, and I encourage you to use it. They do a lot of interesting things. The New York Times, to Pepsi, to Target, everybody uses Bitly already, but you don't see the word Bitly, right? You see their personal, their customized accounts like nyt.ms and pep.si. Those are all Bitly. And it's a really good service, especially for those of you who are interested in data. One of the things I was mentioning earlier is that with data comes obviously the chance to learn, but also the chance to be disappointed and the chance to, it's always better when you didn't know in some cases, right? So one of the tools, one of the apps I love is called Moment. Has anybody played with this? M-O-M-E-N-T. It tells you how many times you've touched your phone. And pick a number and guess what that is, and then you actually use the service, and it's like 5 to 10 times more than what you thought. So it was better when you didn't know. And I come from a world of journalism where not knowing was how we operated. We didn't know anything about our data, and we were very happy with that. So we imagined if we had an article in Time magazine, 1 million people read it, when in fact almost nobody read it. They just kind of flipped through the covers or whatever, right? Like it's true in every publication. I used to be on TV in New York a lot. I was on the Today Show dozens of times. I was on the local news channels 600 times in the 2000s, and nobody watched me. Even in my home, nobody watched me. And once I started getting the data, it was really scary. Otherwise, I just presumed everybody was watching me and knew what I was talking about, but nobody was. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. And I want to pull out a couple of ideas from my work with purpose-driven companies. So I went to the Met, and I had a great time there, and then I lost my job at the Met, and because they were restructuring, and so I was asked to leave. And then I was Chief Digital Officer of Columbia, then Chief Digital Officer of the Met, and then I became Chief Digital Officer of New York City, and I was reorged out of that job. And so I lost 2 jobs in 12 months. And it is great for character building, but almost nothing else. And for those of you like Catherine who hasn't seen me in a while, my character has improved dramatically. So, I do not recommend this happening to you, but I do encourage you to kind of think about building your network when you don't need it, so that it's there when you need it. And that's one of the lessons from this. Everything you're seeing today is being presented off my phone. And I'm doing that on purpose. Not only is it from my phone, but everything you see here was created on the phone. And I'm using Google Slides to do that. Why? Because I think that all of us are constantly creating content, these beautiful 2, 3 monitors on our desktops, but everything's being consumed on the phone. That doesn't mean you stop using your beautiful monitors, but try to create more stuff on your phone if you can, because that's where our consumers are living. And so especially if you're a purpose-driven organization where you're dealing with catering to people who often don't have the best screens and the best technology, thinking about how you're creating it for those kinds of folks, I think, is really important. So I hope you will think about that in your work as you're doing it. And so after losing my second job in 12 months, I decided I'll never wear a tie again, except at weddings and funerals, and I will not work for anybody except as a consultant. And so now I do social media coaching and consulting, and in that process, I'm working with some interesting organizations that I want to tell you about a couple of them, because I think you will get some ideas about how they use data. One of them is this particular institution. We love the Natural History Museum, but here's another kind of museum. Anyone recognize this? Probably not, because you haven't been there. It's only 3 months old, a little more than 3 months old. It's called the Louvre in Abu Dhabi, the new Louvre Museum in Abu Dhabi. We live in a world where there's a new Louvre in Abu Dhabi and Donald Trump might win the Nobel Prize. That's coming. It is a really unusual world, right? This is one of our, I've always said that I wanted their motto to be, hey, come to the Louvre Abu Dhabi where we have 14 lifeguards. How is that for a piece of data? That's intriguing, right? Why do they have 14 lifeguards? Well, you can actually see one of them right there. Do you see him? Right here. And that's because Jean Nouvel, the great architect, French architect, has built the Arabian Sea the Arabian Gulf into the museum and the art. It's spectacular. And I urge you, if you get to Dubai, it's an hour by Uber, and go check it out. And this is not even the art, right? This is just the architecture. But what they are doing there in terms of data is making sure that they're doing something that's unusual for the rest of us, those of us who have millions of objects as you do at Natural History or at the Met where there's 1 million objects. There they only have 300 objects. And they're telling the stories of those 300 objects, and they're building it up as they're going along. You almost never get a chance to see that. Most museums open with 10, 20, 30,000 objects. Here they're doing it with just 300, and they're getting you a chance to kind of learn about each of them as they're doing it. So it's a very special use of data, and I encourage you to check out what they're doing on there. By the way, one of the objects that they recently got, you may have seen, the world's most expensive painting, the last Leonardo in the wild that was sold for $450 million. It's coming there in October, so you can take a look at that if you're interested in art. I'll also show you here a example. Sorry. This is fun with your phone, right? When you are, okay, here we go. Here's a piece of data that I wanted to show you. So when I was at the Met, we used to say that our job is to tell 1 million+ stories about our 1 million+ pieces of art to 1 billion people. And this is the content we used to create in 1 year at the Met. And if you're a publishing organization, you're creating that in some fashion, maybe much more or much less than this. But having this data and tracking it was really important to us. And we were able to do this properly in a way because we got our first data analytics person at the Met. And why was that important? Because the Met, like most museums, is really good at collecting data and tracking how many people are in the building and how much money people gave. But understanding our digital metrics was almost non-existent at the Met. And then I met this amazing digital expert who I thought was terrific. She was at the Tate, and so we brought her to America. We hired her, we brought her to America, and now she's here. And her Twitter handle is Elenustica, and I encourage you to follow her. And you can also say hi. She's sitting right over there. Wave, Elena Via Espesa, but her Twitter handle is Elenustica, and follow her. She has a PhD in social media of museums. You didn't even know there was such a thing. And she has that, so you can call her doctor. And she just does incredible work, and she has this data site called Artsmetrics, artsmetrics.com, where she blogs about stuff. Is your whole thesis on there, your dissertation? Yeah, if you have a lot of time, you can read her dissertation. But she takes insights and shares them. And what she did to change the museum culture is hard to explain or hard to justify. But one of the things she did was build out the way we used to report our own information was quite difficult to understand. And what she did was she said that the important thing is not to drown your bosses in data and information about everything we're doing, but to focus on just a few things. And this is what I want to show you. And here we go. So it's going to come up. So what we did was, or what she did, because I didn't do any of this, this was all her, was take our information and make it into one-page documents that you could look at. Sorry, here we go. Okay, so let me just go here, and here we go. So you're seeing here for the first time that she created these one-page insights that changed the museum and changed the culture of the museum, because suddenly we understood what was going on digitally in the museum. And I've been talking a lot about museums, and you may be in other fields, but the same idea applies, that we generate so much content, we generate so much data, but no one understands it. And part of our job is to teach our bosses what points of data are important and what's not important. So here, looking at things about the opening, this is our annual statistics, and presented in this single one-page format was just kind of beautiful and elegant, and it made a big difference in people understanding everything that was going on at the Met. And the instinct is to create pages and pages of data. Instead, pick out one thing and do this. By the way, I love this project. One of my favorites called Meow Met, where it's a Google Chrome extension where you get a free cat from the Met collection every time you open a new browser. So it's really fun. And you can see how they're using it. It was built by in our media lab. Here are some traffic trends, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So think about simplifying as much as possible. In our projects at the Met, the current CDO, my deputy and my successor, Loic Talon, always talks about how when you create projects, make them simple, useful, and delightful. Simple, useful, and delightful. And in fact, most nonprofits do the exact opposite of that, right? Like, how can you get it more complicated, more difficult, more hard to understand? And so I encourage you to think about doing this and talk to Elena about how she does this. She's been blogging about it, tweeting about it for a long time. So definitely follow up with her. And I'm going to just look at Matt to figure out how much time I have left so I can take maybe a couple of questions, and then I have just a thing to end with. So Matt's going to give me the hook here in a second.
You know, it's a good point for your wrap.
Yeah, so why don't we take a couple of questions, and I'll wrap with a short thing I want to show you. Yeah.
Hi, so what, just being a big fan of the Met, I wonder what were some of the actual items of the data that you found that you were able to make recommendations to them?
Sure, sorry. Yeah, so here's an example. Until very recently, the Met had no idea when people walked into the Great Hall, if they turned right or left. Did they go to Egyptian or they go to Greek and Roman? They had no idea because there was no way to track that. And from our audio devices, there was data for the first time that we were able to glean and know that X percentage turn right, X percentage turn. Not everybody takes the guides, but that was an example of then you can plan for it. And again, Elena will have a lot of ideas. Another was that people weren't using the audio guides as much as we thought. Even in museums, when it's free, people don't take it. So we took the audio content and put it on SoundCloud and put it on the web, because the goal was to get it out there more than of course it was to make money, but could we continue to make money and give it away was the test, and we were in that particular case. Obviously, if we had done all the money part right, I would still have a job, but I don't. One more question?
One more question.
Yeah.
Let me get the microphone.
Oh, yeah, sorry, microphone. Yeah, anybody else have a question? Okay, so I'm going to leave you with two things. One is to make a plug for my flagship event. It's called Social Media Weekend, and Elena is actually presenting at it. And it's June 1 and 2 at CUNY, and there's a code for 30% off right on the screen, and I hope some of you will come to it. It's June 1 and 2, it's a Friday, Saturday, and it's a lot of fun, and you'll learn a lot of things. And I wanted to leave you with this very unusual video that I saw today, and it's about data. We talk a lot about social media, that's the world I live in, and I work with, as you heard, some museums, but I also work with the UN Refugee Agency. I work with Global Teacher Prize. At Teacher Prize, we give one teacher $1 million in the world. It's like the Nobel Prize of Teaching. Work with the Pulitzers, and in all of them, I say to all of them the same thing that I'm saying to you folks, that as you're collecting your data, make sure you're telling stories with it. Humanize the data, make it about the people, make it about your staff, make it about the people you help, and that will matter. So I'm going to just play this video. If the video plays, it's only 58 seconds. Let's see. So I'll just pause here. Anybody know who that is? That's the co-founder of Facebook that most of us don't hear about. This is Chris Hughes, at Chris Hughes, and he is amazingly someone who cares so much about poor people that he's written a book called Fair Shot, which is about this, and he started something called the Economic Security Project. And listen to his idea.
Our phones and our cars, even with our thermostats.
We are the product. We are
creating
Chris.
immense amounts of data. And at the same time, a small group of companies is creating historic levels of profits from it. So the idea is to say, let's strike a bargain. Yes, these companies can and should innovate. We want technology to move the world forward. We also want to make sure that all this data that people are creating is protected, number one, and two, that people can share in the upside. So a royalty, call it 5% on the revenues of companies that profit from consumer data, goes into a sovereign wealth fund, and then it cuts out a dividend check.
Like the Alaska
every
Oil Fund.
There's a template for how to do it in Alaska.
Right.
They
So you're
do it.
talking about
Not
taking
oil there.
taxing the
The
tech
idea
companies and
is,
make money off
some of you like that idea. Okay, so the idea is that all these companies are collecting our data. We are the product, we are the data, you've heard that. And the profits, 5% of their profits go into a sovereign fund, and you get universal basic income. So every American would get a check for a couple $100, I guess. And there is a precedent for it that I'd never heard of in Alaska. If you're an Alaskan resident, you get money from their oil exploration. So it's a provocative idea, and it was given out today at the Milken Institute. So I just wanted to leave you with that as you kind of think about data and greater good, about making it kind of the public good. And if I can ever help you with anything, please let me know. Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks.